We used your frequent flyer miles for the family trip to Bali, Dad said casually. 340,000 miles, 11 years of business travel. My daughter and I had been saving them for her first trip to Japan, her dream since age 8. I smiled, called the airline. I'd like to report unauthorized account access. There were 14 people checked in at the gate when the alert hit. My father said it at 6:18 on a Sunday evening, between passing the mashed potatoes and asking my daughter to move her water glass. We used your frequent flyer miles for the family trip to Bali. He said it casually, like he had borrowed a screwdriver. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. My daughter Sophie was sitting beside me. She was 11, small for her age, with dark hair tied in a loose braid and a pencil tucked behind one ear. She had been drawing a map of Japan on the back of a grocery receipt. I looked at Dad. What did you say? He kept eating. The miles, he said. We used them for Bali. My mother gave me a quick smile. Don't make a face, Deborah. I put my fork down. How many miles? Dad shrugged. I don't know, a few 100,000? My mouth went dry. How many? My sister Melissa answered from across the table. 340,000, I think. My brain counted. 340,000 miles. 11 years of business travel. 14 delayed flights. 2 overnight airport closures. Hundreds of hotel breakfasts eaten alone. Birthday mornings I had watched through video calls because I was in Denver, Phoenix, Toronto, or Dallas, reviewing someone else's financial controls. Sophie stopped drawing. Her pencil stayed pressed against the receipt. Mom? She said. I looked at her. Her eyes had already changed. Children know when adults have taken something, even before anyone admits it. Those were our Japan miles, she said quietly. Nobody answered her. My father reached for the gravy. You can earn more. Sophie's fingers curled around the edge of the receipt. We were saving them. Dad finally looked at her. And Bali is a family trip. The word family landed exactly where he wanted it to. My mother sighed. Deborah, please be flexible. That was one of our family words. Flexible meant give up something you earned. Flexible meant Melissa's emergency became my responsibility. Flexible meant Dad made the decision, Mom softened the wording, and I was expected to smile. I looked around the table. Dad, Mom, Melissa and her husband Aaron, their 3 children, my Aunt Karen, my Uncle Steve, 2 cousins and their partners. 14 people once I counted everyone who had been included. Everyone except Sophie and me. When is the trip? I asked. Melissa smiled too quickly. Tuesday. This Tuesday? Yes. What time? Dad frowned. Why? What time is the flight? 10:25. From O'Hare? Yes. What airline? He set down his fork. Deborah, don't turn this into an audit. I am an auditor. I had been one for 15 years. I audited expense reports, vendor contracts, access logs, travel accounts, internal controls, and the quiet little gaps people believed nobody would notice. I noticed gaps for a living. I looked at Dad. How did you access my account? Mom spoke before he could. You gave us the password years ago. No, I gave Dad access to print one boarding pass when his printer broke. Well, you never said he couldn't use it again. My hands went cold. Sophie's pencil rolled off the table. Nobody bent to pick it up. What exactly did you book? I asked. Melissa leaned back. Flights, obviously. What class? Aaron laughed under his breath. Business. I looked at him. He stopped laughing. 14 business class tickets? I asked. Dad's voice hardened. We wanted everyone comfortable. Using my account. You weren't using the miles. Sophie stared at her map. She had colored Tokyo in red, Kyoto in blue, Osaka in green. For 3 years, she had added places to that map. She had watched videos about cherry blossoms, train stations, vending machines, and tiny ramen shops. She kept a glass jar in her room labeled Japan. It held $286 in birthday money, allowance, and coins she found in coat pockets. She had been 8 when she first said, "When I'm 12, can we go?" I had said yes, not because I knew how, because I needed her to believe some promises were real. Dad wiped his mouth with a napkin. "You two can go somewhere else later." That was the reasonable line. Calm, practical, cruel. I asked, "Did you charge anything to the card saved in my account?" Nobody answered. My brain counted again. 14 tickets, business class, taxes, fees, seat selections. My mother looked at Melissa. Melissa looked at Aaron. Aaron looked at his plate. "How much was charged to my card?" I asked. Dad's jaw tightened. 6,000 something. Something? $6,842, Melissa said. Sophie inhaled softly beside me. She knew enough about money to know that number was not small. I stood. Mom's voice sharpened. "Sit down." I picked up Sophie's pencil and handed it to her. "Get your coat, sweetheart." She didn't ask why. She folded her map carefully. That hurt more than if she had cried. Dad pushed his chair back. "Deborah, this is already done." I looked at him. "No," I said. "It's booked." He stared at me. I picked up my bag. My hands were still cold, but my voice was steady. I didn't scream. I went home and opened the account history. My name is Deborah Walsh. I was 39 years old, a senior internal auditor for a medical equipment company in Chicago, and a single mother to Sophie. Her father, Mark, left when she was 4. He did not vanish dramatically. He just became less available in small, measurable steps. First, every other weekend became 1 weekend a month. Then 1 weekend every 2 months. Then birthday texts sent at 11:48 p.m. By the time Sophie was 8, he lived in Arizona with a new wife and referred to seeing his daughter as working around logistics. So I worked. I built my life around calendars, receipts, school pickup, airport gates, and backup plans. My parents helped sometimes. That was the hook. They picked Sophie up from school when my flight landed late. They kept her overnight when I traveled. They reminded me often. "We're the reason you still have a career," Mom once said. It was during Sophie's 3rd grade spring concert. I had landed at O'Hare at 4:10, taken a cab directly to the school, and arrived 6 minutes before she walked on stage. Mom was waiting in the lobby. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks." She was upset all afternoon. I called her twice. She needed someone physically there. "I'm here now." Mom smiled. "Because we covered for you." That was the first pattern. Help was never help. It was an invoice they could present later. The second pattern happened when Melissa needed $9,000 for a kitchen renovation. She called it a loan. Dad called it an investment in family harmony. I said no. I had just paid $4,300 for Sophie's dental work, and my emergency fund was thin. Dad came to my apartment the next evening. He stood in my kitchen while Sophie did homework at the table. "Melissa's contractor needs the deposit Friday." "I don't have $9,000 to give her." "You have savings." "For emergencies." "This is an emergency to her." "No, it's a kitchen." Dad lowered his voice. "She has 3 children. I have 1. She has more pressure." Sophie stopped writing. I saw her shoulders pull inward. That was what she did when the room became tense. She made herself smaller. Dad glanced at her and said, "We shouldn't discuss adult money in front of children." He had brought adult money into my kitchen. He had raised his voice. But somehow I was the problem. I transferred Melissa $5,000 the next morning. She never paid it back. When I asked 6 months later, she texted, "You know things are tight." Then, "I thought family helped without keeping score." I still had those screenshots. The third pattern came 2 years later. I had earned a company travel credit after volunteering for a difficult audit in Singapore. The credit could be used for one companion ticket. I told Sophie we might use it for California. She wanted to see the ocean. 3 days later, Mom called. "Your father and I are using that ticket for New York." I thought I had heard her wrong. "What ticket?" "The companion credit." "You can't. It's on my employee account." "Your father already spoke to someone." "Who?" "A travel representative." "Why would he do that?" Mom sounded irritated. "Because he wants to take me somewhere nice." I promised Sophie. She's a child, she'll forget. Sophie did not forget. We were standing in the grocery store when I got that call. She was holding a box of cereal. Afterward, she put it back on the shelf and said, "It's okay. Grandma probably needs it more." That sentence stayed with me. An 8-year-old had learned that wanting something made her selfish. I called the travel department and blocked the transfer. Dad did not speak to me for 3 weeks. Mom told everyone I had humiliated him. At Thanksgiving, Melissa leaned across the table and said, "Was California really worth damaging your relationship with Dad?" We never went to California. The credit expired while I was trying to decide whether using it would create another fight. That was how my family worked. They did not always take things directly. Sometimes they made the cost of keeping something so exhausting that I surrendered it myself. The miles started accumulating before Sophie was born. At first, they were just numbers. Then she turned 8 and became obsessed with Japan after a school presentation. She came home with a library book about Tokyo. "Mom, they have trains that go really fast." "I've heard." "And cherry blossoms." "Yes." "And there's a place where deer bow." "I'm not sure they actually bow." "They do. I saw it." That night, she made the jar. She wrote Japan in purple marker and taped a paper cherry blossom to the side. "How much does Japan cost?" she asked. "A lot." "How much is a lot?" "Several $1,000s." She thought about it. Then she put in $12 from her birthday card. I started. After that, we made rules. I would save the miles, she would save spending money. We would go after she turned 12, if school dates and work allowed it. I showed her the account once a month. 180,000, she read when she was 9. Getting closer. 230,000, she said the next year. Still closer. When the balance reached 300,000, she hugged me, not because she understood airline valuations, because she believed the number meant the promise was becoming real. My father knew all of this. He knew because Sophie talked about Japan constantly. She showed him her map. She told him which snacks she wanted to try. She asked him whether he thought she could learn enough Japanese to order food by herself. He said, "You'll probably lose interest before then." She didn't. Dad also knew my login because of one flight in 2019. He had been traveling to Boston for a reunion. His printer failed. He called me, frustrated. "I need the boarding pass." "I'll email it." "I can't find it." "I'm boarding a flight, Dad. Just give me the login." I did. I changed the password afterward, but years later, when the airline introduced family pooling, Dad asked to connect his account. He said it would make gifting miles easier. I approved the connection. I thought it only allowed transfers I authorized. I was wrong, or more accurately, I had failed to consider that my father would search for a way around my permission. That Sunday night, after dinner, Sophie sat at the kitchen table while I logged in. The transaction history loaded slowly. She was still holding her folded map. I saw the deduction first. 340,000 miles redeemed, then 14 passenger names, then the tax charge. $6,842.42. My Visa. I took it out of my wallet, 0.17. My Visa. I took screenshots. Sophie watched my face. Can they do that? They already did. Are our miles gone? For now. She looked down. I shouldn't have told everyone about Japan. I turned toward her. What? If I didn't talk about it so much, maybe Grandpa wouldn't know we had enough. That was the moment. Not the miles, not the money. My child believed her excitement had caused the theft. I moved my chair closer. You did nothing wrong. But I told him. He knew because we trusted him. She rubbed the edge of the map with her thumb. Are they still going? I don't know yet. She looked at me carefully. You're mad. Yes. Are you going to yell? No. That answer seemed to relax her. I realized she had been waiting to see whether I would become like them. I opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it Bali Account Access. Inside it, I saved the screenshots, the passenger list, the credit card charge, the account history, and the old email confirming Dad's family pool access. Then I checked the booking details. 14 passengers, Chicago to Los Angeles to Denpasar, business class. Departure Tuesday at 10:25 a.m. Seats assigned, meals selected. Everyone checked into the same resort for 8 nights. I found the hotel confirmation in my email trash. Dad had used my address because the airline account required it. The reservation total was over $19,000, paid separately. They had money for the hotel. They simply preferred to use what belonged to me for the flights. At 9:14 p.m., Dad texted, "You need to calm down." At 9:16, "The children are excited." At 9:20, "Don't punish everyone over a misunderstanding." At 9:28, Mom sent, "Your father worked hard to organize this." I stared at that sentence. He had worked hard to organize the use of my property. I thought the pattern was temporary. It wasn't. The first pressure wave started before sunrise. Dad called at 6:03 Monday morning. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, then Mom, then Melissa. At 6:22, Dad left a message. "Deborah, call me. We need to handle this like adults." At 6:31, Melissa texted, "Please don't ruin this for the kids." I typed, "Please send me written confirmation that you had my permission to use 340,000 miles and charge $6,842.17 to my card." She did not answer. At 7:10, Mom called while I was making Sophie's lunch. I answered because I wanted the conversation documented, and Illinois law allowed me to record a conversation I was part of. "What?" I said. "Your father is very upset. He accessed my airline account without permission. He believed he had permission." "Based on what?" "You've always shared." "No, I haven't." "You've helped before." "That is not permission." Mom lowered her voice. "Listen to yourself. You're talking about your father like he's a criminal. I'm describing what he did. He booked a family vacation. With stolen miles. Don't use that word." "What word would you prefer?" She went silent. I placed a sandwich in Sophie's lunch bag. Sophie was standing near the counter, pulling her sleeves over her hands. She was listening. Mom said, "You're overreacting." I looked at my daughter. "No," I said. "I'm reacting after years of not reacting enough." I ended the call. At work, I could not focus on vendor testing. I sat in a glass conference room with spreadsheets open while my phone lit up every few minutes. Aunt Karen, "Your dad said you're threatening to cancel the trip." Cousin Blake, "We already took time off work." Melissa, "The kids have been packed for a week." Aaron, "This could destroy the family." I responded to none of them. At 9:40, I called the airline's general support line. The first representative sounded confused. "You're saying you know the passengers?" "Yes." "But you didn't authorize the booking?" "Correct." "Was your account hacked?" "It was accessed by a family member who had old linked account privileges." "That may be considered a family dispute. It includes an unauthorized credit card charge." That changed her tone. She transferred me to account security. After 47 minutes, a security specialist named Lena came on the line. She asked me to verify my identity. I gave her the account number, billing address, recent travel dates, and the last 4 digits of the stored card. Then I said, "I need to know whether the tickets can be canceled before departure." "They are currently ticketed. Can they be canceled?" "If fraud is confirmed, yes." "What do you need?" "A formal unauthorized access report. We may also need a police report or card dispute reference. Send me the form. She emailed it while we were still speaking. I opened it. There were 12 questions: date of discovery, names of suspected users, whether credentials had been shared, whether account linking permissions existed, whether the cardholder authorized taxes and fees. I answered carefully. I did not exaggerate. I did not write that Dad had hacked me. I wrote that he used retained access outside its intended purpose, without notice or consent. I attached the screenshots. At 11:18, I received an automated case number, a U-88419. I saved the email. At noon, Dad appeared in the lobby of my office. Security called me. "There's a man here saying he's your father." I closed my eyes. Do not send him up. He says it's a family emergency. It isn't. Do you want us to ask him to leave? Yes. 2 minutes later, Dad called. "You had security remove me? You came to my workplace. Because you won't answer." "I have answered. You're making accusations. I filed a report." The line went quiet. "What report?" "With the airline." His voice changed. "Cancel it." "No." "Deborah?" "No." "You gave me access." "I did not give you permission to redeem 340,000 miles. We're all going together." "Sophie and I weren't invited." "That's not the point." "It is one of the points." "The resort package had limits. So you used our Japan miles for a trip that excluded us." "You're an adult. Stop making this emotional." I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, "Did you know the card charge was going to my Visa?" He paused. "That's how the account was set up." "That isn't an answer. We planned to reimburse you." "When?" "After the trip." "How much?" "All of it." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we knew you would complicate it." There it was, the concrete answer. They did not misunderstand. They hid it because they knew I would say no. I said, "Send me proof that you plan to reimburse $6,842.17. You know I'm good for it. Send me the transfer confirmation. I'm not doing an audit with my daughter. I'm asking for proof. This is what I mean. You make family feel like business. You turned my account into financing." He hung up. The second escalation wave started at 2:07 p.m. My credit card app notified me that someone had attempted to remove the card from the airline profile. Then another alert appeared. Password reset requested. Then another. Family pool administrator change requested. I took screenshots of all three. At 2:15, I changed the password again. At 2:17, I enabled a hardware security key. At 2:22, I called the card issuer. The fraud specialist froze the card and opened dispute reference C-197440. "Do you know who made the charge?" she asked. "Yes." "Would you like to identify them?" "Yes." I gave Dad's full name. My voice shook once. Only once. At 3:04, Melissa emailed me. The subject line was, "Let's be reasonable." "Deb, Dad shouldn't have used the card without asking, but canceling the flights would be extreme. Everyone has planned around this. We can repay you monthly." The miles are different because they don't cost you actual money. You travel for work, so technically your company paid for them anyway. Please think about the children. Melissa. I read the sentence twice. The miles don't cost you actual money. 11 years away from home apparently had no cost. I forwarded the email to my personal account and saved it as a PDF. Then I replied, "Please confirm the total monthly repayment amount, repayment start date, and who authorized the use of my miles." She answered, "This is exactly why nobody can talk to you." I saved that too. At 4:30, Sophie's school called. The secretary said my mother had tried to add herself as an approved pickup person. She said you were traveling unexpectedly, the secretary told me. My whole body went cold. Do not release Sophie to anyone except me. We won't. Your mother is not on the current list. Please add a note that no changes can be made without in-person identification from me. We can do that. Email me confirmation. The secretary hesitated. Is everything okay? Yes, I said automatically. Then I corrected myself. No, but I'm handling it. I left work early. When I picked Sophie up, she climbed into the car and placed her backpack carefully between her feet. Grandma called the school, I said. She looked at me. Why? I don't know. Was she going to take me somewhere? I don't know. She went quiet. I hated how quickly she understood danger. At home, I photographed her current school pickup form. I updated the emergency contacts. I removed my parents. I added my friend Nia, who lived 10 minutes away and had known Sophie since preschool. Then I printed the airline emails, the card charge, Melissa's repayment message, the school confirmation, and the login alerts. The folder grew. At 6:12, Dad sent a group message to 14 people. Deborah is threatening to cancel everyone's trip because she is upset she wasn't included. We are trying to resolve this privately. I read it twice. Then I typed one reply. My airline account was accessed without permission. 340,000 miles were redeemed, and $6,842.17 was charged to my credit card. I have filed reports with the airline and card issuer. Do not contact Sophie. I sent it. The group exploded. Aunt Karen, you gave your father access. Cousin Blake, can we just pay you back? Melissa, you are humiliating Dad. Aaron, the flights are non-refundable. I replied only to Aaron. Please send me the fare rules and the written authorization you relied upon. He did not answer. At 8:03, Mom came to my apartment. She knocked softly at first, then harder. Sophie was brushing her teeth. I checked the hallway camera. Mom held a white envelope. I spoke through the door. What do you need? Open the door. No. I brought a check. For how much? $2,000. The charge was $6,842.17. We'll pay the rest later. What about the miles? Deborah, open the door. No. Her face tightened. This is not how family behaves. I looked through the screen at the woman who had tried to change my daughter's school pickup access. How does family behave? You know your father didn't mean harm. He knew I would say no. That doesn't mean, it means he avoided asking. She held the envelope closer to the camera. Take the check and stop the report. No. The children will be devastated. My child is already devastated. She'll get over Japan. I stared at the screen. Mom realized too late what she had said. I asked, why did you call Sophie's school? Silence. Mom, I thought we might pick her up tomorrow. For what? To spend time together before the flight? Without asking me? You weren't answering. That is not permission. You're being impossible. I said, leave. She stood there another minute. Then she put the envelope on the floor and walked away. I did not open the door until the hallway was empty. The check was made out to me. The memo line said, travel share. Not reimbursement. Not unauthorized charge. Travel share. I photographed it and added it to the folder. Then I tore it in half. Sophie stood behind me in her pajamas, holding her stuffed cat. Are they going tomorrow? She asked. I looked at the clock. 9:26 p.m. I don't know. Do you want them to? No. She nodded. Me neither. Then she looked guilty. Is that bad? No. Even the kids? I thought carefully. It's okay to be angry when people benefit from something that was taken from you. She hugged the stuffed cat tighter. Are we still going to Japan? I wanted to promise her. Instead, I told the truth. I'm going to do everything I can. She nodded. That was when I stopped arguing and started documenting. At 6:45 Tuesday morning, I called the airline security department. Lena answered after a short hold. I reviewed your submission, she said. And? The account access appears to have come through the linked family profile. Does that make it authorized? Not necessarily. The card charge is a separate issue, and your account notes show no approval from you. Can you cancel the tickets? We need one final verification. What? Please confirm that you understand all 14 passengers may be denied boarding and may have to arrange return transportation from the airport. I understand. She read the passenger names one by one. Dad, Mom, Melissa, Aaron, their children, Aunt Karen, Uncle Steve, my cousins, their partners. 14 people. After each name, I said, unauthorized. At the end, Lena asked, would you like to proceed? I looked across the table. Sophie was eating toast. She had her Japan jar beside her cereal bowl. Yes, I said. Lena placed me on hold. At 7:53, she returned. The tickets have been flagged pending immediate fraud review. Airport staff will be notified. Have they checked in? All 14 passengers have checked in. Are they at the gate? According to the system, yes. My phone began vibrating before the call ended. Dad, Mom, Melissa, Aaron, Aunt Karen. I ignored them. Then Dad left a voicemail. His voice was loud enough that I could hear it from the phone speaker. They pulled our boarding passes. Call me now. Another voicemail came 30 seconds later. This is serious. Then Melissa. The kids are crying. Fix this. Sophie looked up from her toast. Did it happen? Yes. She looked down. For 1 second, I thought she might cry. Instead, she asked, are the miles back? Not yet. At 8:11, an unknown number called. I answered. This is Officer Ramirez with Chicago Police. I'm at O'Hare with members of your family. My heart kicked once. Okay. Your father says this is a misunderstanding involving airline points. It involves unauthorized account access and a credit card charge. Do you have documentation? Yes. Can you email it? He gave me an address. I sent the folder contents in one compressed file. Account history, card statement, login alerts, Melissa's email, Dad's group message, the school pickup confirmation, the check marked travel share. Officer Ramirez called back 14 minutes later. His tone had changed. Ms. Walsh, I'm going to read this back to make sure I understand. Your father accessed your account, redeemed 340,000 miles for 14 tickets, charged $6,842.17 to your card, and did not have permission. Correct. And he admitted he didn't ask because he believed you would object. Correct. I heard voices behind him, Dad's voice, angry and distant. She gave me access. Officer Ramirez said, access is not the same as authorization. It was one sentence, calm, official, devastating. Someone began talking over him. Then Melissa shouted, "This is a family matter." Officer Ramirez replied, "The credit card charge is not only a family matter." I closed my eyes. For years, my parents had controlled every conversation by deciding which facts counted. Now a stranger in uniform was reading the facts aloud, and they could not edit him. The officer asked whether I wanted to make a formal police report. I looked at Sophie. She was holding the Japan jar with both hands. "Yes," I said. He gave me report number 530. Then he asked whether I wanted immediate contact from my family restricted. I want it documented that they are not authorized to access my account, my home, or my daughter's school. He paused. Understood. At 8:47, Dad sent one final text. You have 5 minutes to fix this before you destroy the family. I replied, you are not authorized to access my accounts, my home, or my child. All future communication must be in writing. That was the boundary. One sentence, no speech, no negotiation. At 9:02, the airline confirmed the tickets had been canceled. The taxes and fees would be reviewed for reversal. The miles were frozen pending restoration. At 9:14, my apartment intercom buzzed, then buzzed again. Then someone held the button down. I opened the camera feed. Dad stood outside the building. Mom was beside him. Melissa was behind them with her phone in her hand. They had left the airport. Dad looked directly into the camera. Open the door. I called building security. Then I called Officer Ramirez back. Dad began pounding on the glass entrance door. You made children cry, Melissa shouted. Mom pressed to the intercom. Deborah, enough. Sophie came out of her room. She heard the pounding. Her face changed. I walked her to Nia's apartment across the hall. Nia opened the door immediately. I've got her, she said. Sophie looked at me. Are you coming back? Yes. Promise? Yes. This time, I knew exactly what the promise required. I returned to my apartment and waited. Building security arrived first. Dad argued with them. This is my daughter's home, the guard said, and she has asked you to leave. Mom tried the reasonable voice. We're worried about her mental state. I opened the door only after Officer Ramirez and another officer arrived. I stayed behind the threshold. Dad pointed at me. She stole our vacation. Officer Ramirez looked at him. Sir, step away from the door. She canceled 14 tickets. They were purchased through an account she says you used without permission. She gave me the password. She withdrew access. This is ridiculous. Officer Ramirez held up one hand. You need to leave. Dad looked at me. His face was red. You think a police report makes you powerful? No, I said. It makes the facts recorded. Mom flinched. Melissa started crying. Real tears this time. Not because Sophie was hurt, not because they had taken from us, because there were consequences at the door. Dad said, You'll regret this. I answered, all communication in writing. The officers walked them out. At 10:30, I called a locksmith. By noon, the lock was changed. The building removed my parents from the visitor list. The airline terminated every linked family permission. My credit card company issued a new number. The school added a password to Sophie's file. I removed my parents from every emergency form. Then I printed the police report number and placed it at the front of the folder. The irreversible step was not canceling Bali. It was removing their access. The miles returned 26 days later. All 340,000. The $6,842.17 charge was reversed 2 weeks after that. The airline sent me a letter confirming unauthorized redemption and account access misuse. I saved it, not because I planned to wave it in anyone's face, because after years in my family, I had learned that memory becomes negotiable when the truth is inconvenient. The first peaceful moment came on a Thursday evening. Sophie and I were eating noodles on the living room floor. She had opened her Japan map again. For weeks, it had stayed folded inside her desk. She pointed to Kyoto. Can we go here? Yes. And Tokyo? Yes. And the deer place? Nada. Can we go there too? Yes. She studied my face. For real? For real. She smiled slowly. Not the careful smile she used around my family. A full one. The second peaceful moment came when we booked the tickets. We used 286,000 miles for 2 round-trip business-class seats to Tokyo. I let Sophie press the final confirmation button. Her finger hovered over it. What if someone takes them again? No one else has access now. Not even Grandpa? Especially not Grandpa. She pressed confirm. The screen changed. Reservation complete. She screamed. Then she covered her mouth and laughed. I laughed too. For once, the sound in our apartment did not make anyone tell us to calm down. Nia came over with sparkling cider. We toasted with mismatched glasses. To Japan, she said. Sophie lifted hers. To passwords. The last family tactic came in March. A box arrived at my office. Inside was a small cake from an expensive bakery. White frosting, pink flowers, a card in Mom's handwriting. We miss you. Families make mistakes. It's time to cool down and move forward. There was no apology, no mention of the miles, no mention of the card, no mention of the school, no mention of Dad pounding on my building door. Just a request that I forget in the name of peace. I photographed the card. Then I emailed Mom. I am willing to consider written communication after you and Dad acknowledge the unauthorized account access, the credit card charge, and the attempt to collect Sophie from school without my permission. Until then, do not send gifts or visit my home, workplace, or her school. Mom replied 11 minutes later. We will not confess to crimes just to satisfy you. I answered, then the boundary remains. Melissa tried too. She sent Sophie a birthday gift through Aunt Karen. A suitcase, yellow, with little cherry blossoms printed on it. The note said, for all your future adventures, love, Aunt Melissa. Sophie looked at it for a long time. Do I have to say thank you? No. Can I keep it? That's your choice. She thought about it. Then she said, I don't want a suitcase from someone who tried to use mine. I understood what she meant. We donated it. My father never apologized. He sent 3 letters. The first accused me of humiliating him. The second listed everything he had ever done for me. The third said he was willing to forgive me if I dropped the police report. I did not respond. The report remained. The school restrictions remained. The account restrictions remained. The new locks remained. In April, Sophie and I flew to Japan. At O'Hare, she counted our bags 3 times. 2 suitcases. Correct. 2 passports. Correct. 2 boarding passes. Correct. And 2 people. I looked at her. Exactly 2. At the gate, she sat beside the window and watched planes move across the runway. She wore a red hoodie and held the Japan jar in her lap, even though we had already emptied it into her spending money account. I wanted to bring it, she said. I know. Because we did it. Yes. When they called our boarding group, she stood so fast she nearly dropped her backpack. On the plane, she pressed her face to the window. The city lights disappeared beneath us. She reached for my hand. Mom? Yes? Did you ruin their trip? I thought about my answer. No. They say you did. They planned a trip using something that wasn't theirs. The truth ruined it. She nodded. Then she pulled the blanket over her knees. In Tokyo, we missed 1 train, got lost in Shinjuku Station, spent too much money on tiny desserts, and stood under cherry blossoms while Sophie took 47 nearly identical photos. In Nara, a deer tried to eat our map. Sophie laughed so hard she had to sit down. I watched her on the grass, breathless and happy, and understood something I should have learned years earlier. Protecting peace sometimes looks rude to people who benefited from your silence. That does not make the boundary wrong. My family taught me that love meant access. Access to my time, my money, my work, my child, my forgiveness. I taught Sophie something different. Love asks. Love respects no. Love does not turn theft into sharing because the thief uses the word family. My parents still tell relatives I overreacted. Maybe they always will. I no longer audit their version of events. The accounts are closed. The passwords are changed. The boundary stays in place. Access to me is not a family right.